Well, greetings, everybody. I'm very, very pleased yet again to get Alasdair Macleod onto my channel to give us his great words of wisdom.
Hmm.
And from a timing perspective, it's Monday morning, and we've just seen an overnight thump on the price of gold. And that sent me to my charts. It sent me to crunching numbers in my desk, which I don't really like to do on a first thing on a Monday morning because I'm a bit of a lazy sod. But anyway, I've done it because I didn't want to. I didn't want to have Alasdair Macleod onto the show and look like a complete twit. So I've done some homework, and it's going to be mainly Alasdair, not me, which is as it should be. But there are some interesting things I think which you need to think about if you are a subscriber and you are an investor in these matters. And I've had some emails first thing this morning over the weekend to subscribers and from subscribers. And yes, the point is, generally speaking, when you have a nice juicy war, especially in the Gulf, God bless America, and that normally, of course, is good for gold because everybody runs to gold when you've got a lot of shit hitting the fan. But I thought to myself, this is odd to see this reaction. And of course, my memory is vague. I was in financial markets in the early 1970s, 1972, 1973, 74, and through the 70s. But an old man's memory is a dodgy thing. So I had to refer to numbers and charts to find out actually what happened, not what my dodgy memory told me. Now, as we have said, Alasdair and I, and Nick Ward sometimes comes onto my channel, we know that there's been no structural change whatsoever globally in the price of silver or gold, fundamentally.
Yeah.
It's a structural bull market. So why are these shenanigans happened just in the last few days? It goes against the grain. But if you look at it, and if you look at the Gulf War in the 1970s, you look at all these, actually there's a flash to bang time because nothing structurally has changed. Nothing structurally has changed in precious metal. What has happened, of course, it's a timing situation after an earlier spike. Well, if you go back to 73, 74, and the remainder of the 1970s, recoiled massively, massively. Really, don't even think about selling anything at the moment if you're getting a bit nervy, because the best is yet to come, believe me. But I won't go any further than that because when we've got a guru in the parlour, tell us what you think. What's your take on all this, Alasdair, and any points of agreement with me?
Well, yes. I think the one time which I refer back to actually was the time of what they call the Great Financial Crisis, which I think is a misnomer because there's an even greater one coming. But 2000, 2008 to 2009, we saw gold fall as the crisis, sort of, if you like, became apparent. It fell from around about $1,000 down to 680 before tripling up until its high in September 2011 when it hit about $1,920. Now, what is interesting is that the first reaction when you get a crisis like this is that everybody flies into the dollar, which is why gold, the gold price fell. And then people start sort of thinking through things a bit better, and they come out of the dollar, which becomes a crowded trade, into other forms of protection, if you like, against risk, and that is basically when gold really rises. We're seeing the same sort of pattern now, but there are big differences. This time, any dip in the gold price, central banks are there, even the big US banks are there, because remember, they've all forecast far higher gold prices. And these banks actually hold no gold at all, or very little gold, for their investment management clients. I mean, you typically you have a large American bank with $1 trillion under management, and they've got no gold, and it's been the best performing asset, along with gold mines and all the rest of it. Really through the last year. So, I mean, these guys are going to buy anything that's available. So what we're looking at, Godfrey, is a paper price. It's the paper markets. Now, if you really do understand that it's the dollar going down and the dollar's collapse into obscurity is being hastened by the mistakes being made in the Middle East, then who would want to go and buy paper? Because the paper is actually dollars. I mean, it might sort of theoretically represent the gold price, but this is not something that you can really hedge into. And not only that, but the numbers involved are so great, coming out of yen, coming out of euros, coming out of sterling, and so on and so forth. The numbers are so great that they go into the most liquid market available for safety. And that, of course, is the dollar. But the mistake in this is to ignore the fact that the dollar is overowned, and massively so already. So you go and buy the dollar at the moment, you're actually buying at the top of the market, in effect. I mean, we've all seen this in our careers in the city, that the last buyers in, they buy on the news, if you like, when it's already been discounted, and they get crucified. And that, I think, sort of describes the situation for the dollar at the moment. There is just not enough available bullion, because if you're going to hedge risk, you don't want to hedge risk by buying a dollar instrument. You want to buy the physical bullion. That's already been cleaned out. So we have this situation where there is absolutely, I mean, if you look at the level of open interest in gold and silver, there's no speculative interest in there at all. The speculators haven't bought it. This is an extraordinary situation. So they can mark the prices up and down wherever, and nobody's really going to challenge them, because nobody really wants to buy the paper. They're only looking really at the physical. I think the important points we need to understand about this is that China is already planning for a collapse in the value of the dollar. I take you back to the time of the rare earths, if you like, when China decided, right, no more rare earths exported to Europe and America. That was in late September last year. What we didn't know at the time was that while they made the declaration about rare earths, without making any declaration at all, they also restricted the exports of silver, because China has been, if you like, the supplier of marginal liquidity into the silver market around the world until that moment. And literally within 2 weeks, there was a liquidity crisis on the LBMA when we saw lease rates go up to 40%. That was on, I think, October the 9th last year. And since then, I mean, you could say that the reason that they did this was because it coincided with the time when America turned around and said, oh, silver is now a critical mineral. In other words, they were duty bound to start stockpiling it. Was China going to supply liquidity into the Western market so that America could build her silver stockpiles? Well, the answer to that is obviously no. But on top of that, having been following China's policies on precious metals for some considerable time now, I can tell you that they have accumulated very, very large quantities of gold off balance sheet. It's not reflected in the PBOC's reserves. And they have also accumulated a lot of silver. Now, we don't know how much, but do not be surprised if these numbers are absolutely massive. So why should they do that? The reason they did that is that back in 1983, the powers that be in China, educated, if you like, in Marxist universities, knew that capitalism would sow the seeds of its own destruction. That's what the Marxists always said. So this would be reflected in the fiat currencies of the capitalist nations. So as they increased their trade into the world and grew their economy, what they did was they put a significant slug of their foreign exchange operations into gold, and more latterly into silver. So they have expected this for a long period of time without actually knowing when it would happen. But the other thing is that they were absolutely certain that they weren't going to change their Confucian approach, if you like, of just sitting on their hands and letting events unfold, rather than, let us say, provoking them. It's not in their interest to provoke a collapse of the dollar, but it is in their interest to protect themselves from the collapse in the dollar. If we come into this year, in February, the Chinese government, through the regulators, told domestic banks and insurance companies who were licensed to own US Treasury debt to sell them. Why would they do that? I mean, this is an extraordinary move. It comes after the establishment of gold vaults, SGE, Shanghai Gold Exchange gold vaults, outside China, principally in Hong Kong and also in Saudi Arabia, whereby gold could be exchanged for yuan and vice versa. So why would they do that? Well, I mean, it's quite clear. And then you take into account also its CIPS settlement system, that's Chinese International Payment System, which does what SWIFT does, but with a big difference. It doesn't have the dollar in the middle of every foreign exchange transactions. CIPS works without the dollar entirely. So what we have here, Godfrey, is China has positioned herself to protect her own fiat currency by turning it into a gold substitute, perhaps initially for foreign exchange purposes. Foreign trade settlement purposes, which tends to be, on a national basis, as it were, effectively replicating the Bretton Woods system. So it's a Bretton Woods Mark II, if you like, run by China. That's what they have set up. So we have now a situation where the dollar is being used, yes, less and less and less. Now, it takes time. Normally, it would take time for this to really work through. But with America triggering this war along with Israel against Iran, which they are plainly going to lose, and the Iranians are telling everybody in the Gulf, look, you've got to get rid of your American bases, then we will stop shelling you. I mean, that's what's going to happen. America is going to have to withdraw from the Middle East. That's going to happen. I mean, who thinks that the Americans can win this one? You've got an army of over 1 million people in Iran. All the bombing has been, I mean, what it's done is it's killed civilians and a few of the head honchos, yeah. But the military is still intact, and also it is devolved. I understand there are 57 different regions, each one managing its own section, if you like, of the military. And they have written instructions. So you can kill as many leaders as you want in Iran, but they will still follow out those instructions. They have taken out all the interceptors. Basically, Israel and America and also the Gulf cooperation states have almost run out of interceptors. Now the real missiles are going to start flying, the hypersonics and all the rest of it. All that's still intact. They've been preparing for this eventuality ever since Saddam Hussein was overthrown, because they analyzed what the Americans did then and realized that they had to decentralize control over the military. Because when the Americans come in, I mean, they can bomb the hell out of you, but you've got to be decentralized. That way, as a nation, is the only way in which you can survive. That's what they've done. And they've also evolved their missile technology to a point where it's superior to ours. I mean, I know that you are a military strategist, Godfrey. That is your background in the TA. And quite frankly, I mean, I'd be interested in your view on this. But this is a huge, great mistake. And what it's doing is it's hastening the end of the fiat dollar. Now, we're talking about the end of the fiat dollar. There are either two outcomes. Either the authorities, by which I mean the Fed and the US Treasury and all the rest of it, put the dollar onto a gold standard. In other words, it becomes a gold substitute. And it's got to be credible at the same time. They also have to take the economic actions to support that, like turn the budget deficit into a budget surplus. 1. 2, plan for the longer term to reduce government involvement in the overall economy. Then they could get it to stick. The other alternative is not to do anything and follow the political imperative, the current political imperative of basically subsidizing everything that appears to be going wrong for the government, which means infinite money printing, debasement of the currency. Which is it going to be? History always tells us that it's politics that drives this situation. So the impact of this war against Iran, as far as I'm concerned, is it hasn't changed anything because we were going in that direction anyway. But what it has done is it has brought forward the eventual demise of the fiat currency system. I would now pencil in a year or two, if you like, before these currencies become completely worthless. So what does that mean for gold? Well, I mean, it's not gold going up, it's currencies going down. And if the dollar goes to zero, then pricing gold in zero value dollars is infinity. I mean, it's as simple as that. And this is why I have always maintained that this is now a period not of asset accumulation. It is a period when you should try and protect what you've got. If they mark down gold in the way in which they're doing, if they continue to do it, as stackers, we should rejoice because it gives an opportunity, if you've missed it, to get back in at a super, super cheap price measured in these collapsing fiat currencies. Basically, it's getting out of credit. This is the key thing. And it's getting into real legal money in everybody's common law. Final settlement. Credit is not final settlement. Gold is. That is why gold standards work. That is why they were set up by the Romans in the first place. They understood the difference between real money and credit. And they left that legacy to us today. We have forgotten it, admittedly. But from my point of view, this is just a wonderful opportunity to pick up physical gold if you can find it. I mean, obviously, for retail, the people we're talking to most of the time, they can access whatever they need, whether it's coin or whether it's small bars or whatever. That is always available. There may be occasionally shortages, but you can get that. The people who really want to buy it are central banks, and more central banks want to buy gold because they realize that it is final settlement, and they realize that it's the way to get out of the risks of paper currencies. And also the big banks who run portfolios on behalf of people who haven't got any gold whatsoever. The big banks who begin to see, particularly in the case of the silver contract, that the entire derivative system is actually fatally flawed. This is why they're trying to get out of the silver contract. I mean, you look at open interest on silver, it has hit 20-year lows. I mean, this is quite extraordinary. Oh, that's what's going on. Anyway, I think I've probably said enough to kick off a debate. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Just to pick up on one or two things that you said there. Yes, I spent a year at the Royal College of Defence Studies studying geopolitical military strategy. And I've been a guest of the Eisenhower Defence College and various other things because I'm published in geeky papers that nobody reads on military strategy, although I rather fancy if the Pentagon had read some of them, they'd have done rather better than they have. One of the things I wrote a paper for the Eisenhower, I think it was, I could be wrong on that, but one of the defence colleges was when we launched our aircraft carriers, the Queen Elizabeth and so on and so forth. And I wrote a 1,000 or 1,500 word article explaining that aircraft carriers had been obsolete since Okinawa. I mean, they are ludicrous, great big fat targets. And of course, that's something that you can't tell. Now, I have a lot of American friends. And Pat Barron, mutual friends in point of fact, of course, very intelligent guys who know only means bake five. But most of America, most of Washington, let's call it Washington rather than America, which is fairer. Washington don't seem to get it. And when I spoke to one of, there was a one-star course at the Royal College. They were one star, which is sort of brigadier level, or major general sort of level on this strategy course. And most of the Americans, lovely guys, I got on well with them, they simply didn't get it. They didn't get it. But the reason they don't get it is because they've never actually put a naval force against a first-rate power. And they couldn't acknowledge that Iran was a first-rate power. And by Jove, it is a first-rate power. And of course, the Americans are now finding out what the Zulus thought they were doing jolly well at Isandwara. The Zulus actually then got into the Battle of Ulundi at the end of the Zulu Wars. And they hadn't faced artillery. And I think we're seeing the same great dynamic. It's a war of hypersonic missiles. And you cannot defend against them any more than the Zulus with shields could actually defend against artillery. Why are we always slow to get this? I mean, here I am, a little bald guy in a little country village in Yorkshire. I knew all this. How could they in the Pentagon not know all this? And of course, we were getting conservative politicians and reform politicians couldn't wait to get stuck in. Because, let's go and join this one. I'm in my hand saying, God Almighty, this is what to keep out of. It's this one, for God's sake. Everybody seems to be so stupid, and I really don't get it. But there we are. We're stuck with it. And when I was over in Washington a little while, it was at the second Iraq War. I said, what's your strategy for getting out? I was at the Brookings Institute. Clean cut, Brooks Brothers shirts and all that kind of thing, the type, like clean cut, all look like sort of Clark Kent in Superman, with all their bits of kit. But how are you going to get out of all this? And the answer was, hey, Mr. Bloom, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Oh, God.
And this is the kind of people that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Absolutely bloody hopeless. And I'm not American. I'm related. I've got American relatives. How can they be this stupid? And to deploy an aircraft carrier in shallow water where there's no sea space to find, goodness me. Nelson wouldn't have done it. Pellew wouldn't have done it. Jellicoe wouldn't do it.
Yeah. I think part of the answer to this, Godfrey, is that the entire military establishment is invested in the past. And they just cannot evolve their thinking. The only time they will evolve their thinking is as a result of combat experience. We're finding that. I mean, who suddenly sort of produced all the drones? Well, it wasn't America. It wasn't us. We're now beginning to develop drone technology. It was others that lead the way. The people who are actually fighting lead the way in terms of evolving the technology. The people who really have a case to defend themselves. This is why Russia is ahead of the rest of the world with its missile technology. This is why Iran is ahead of the world in its missile technology. This is why China is ahead of the world in terms of its signals intelligence. I mean, we're sort of stuck in the past. We don't realize it. We think that, as you rightly say, with a few aircraft carriers and all the sort of the destroyers and the frigates that buzz around it along with all the aircraft and all the rest of it, this is power. This is going to kick ass, whatever. I mean, they're living in the past. That's the problem. And not only that, but you've also got the Israeli lobby. I mean, Israel has a real problem because it's not liked in the Arabs. It's in the Arab world. What it's done against Gaza is seen by the Arabs as a genocide, if you like, and consequently, Israel obviously feels very, very insecure. And when you're insecure, you lash out, and that's basically get the Americans on side, and we will lash out. This appears to be what's happened, and it's crazy.
They've been trying to do it for years and years and years. They've succeeded, but of course, now that this Iron Dome was a myth, it's disappeared and all the rest of it. And of course, now they're just bringing out this year's missiles, the Iranians. They're old ones. Now, I can't help but think this has to be the end. I don't see how that they can recover from this. They're being flattened every single night. And they've brought it on themselves. As you say, they've got no mates except the people that they pay in Congress and the American political system. But then, of course, my father told me once when I was a young lad, many years ago in the late 1950s, Alasdair, he said, buy your friends, boy, they're the most reliable kind.
It's a touch of cynicism in the Bloom household, I think.
Just a hint.
but well directed, certainly. No, I think I actually worry about Israel's future because one of the consequences of losing this one is America is going to be pushed out of the Middle East. And consequently, Israel will not have a protector. She is going to have to turn round to Russia and China in order to guarantee her future. There is absolutely no other way. So that is interesting. I don't know how quickly they will be able to do that. It probably means that Netanyahu has to go. And I think anyway, Trump probably has to go as well. But that's a different story. But the other thing, of course, is that what the Iranians are now doing is they are saying, we will let Chinese ships through. We will let Bangladeshi ships through. We will let Russian ships through. And this is the kicker. They're now saying that if you can demonstrate to us that the oil that you have picked up in the Gulf terminal, you have paid for it in yuan and not in dollars, not in euros, not in anything else, but in Chinese yuan, we will allow you to go through the straits. It's the end of the petrodollar and it's the emergence of the Petroyuan, big time. I mean, it was already beginning to switch a bit with Saudi Arabia selling oil to China and accepting payment in yuan. But this is a new development. And basically, I mean, we're seeing the end of the dollar. It's just being brought forward. Yeah, it's a fascinating story to watch. It's a frightening story, but a fascinating story. And of course, it's bankrupting all the Gulf states. I don't know what their future is going to be. I mean, places like Dubai, for example. I mean, that sort of model of tax-free, wealth accumulation. Everybody with money goes to live there to avoid taxes. Huge, great revenues coming from the fact that this is one of the biggest airport hubs in the world, and all the rest of it. All that, I think, has been fatally damaged. It really has. I don't know. I don't know where that's going to go. But I mean, there's big, big change here. The Americans are out. I think that the Russian and Chinese Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS partnership are in. BRICS is another story because I think I'm right in saying that India is due to host the next BRICS chairmanship. But, I mean, she's been sitting on the fence with America. She's still got 3 ships, I think, Iranian ships, which she hasn't sent out on instructions from America. The Iranians are not pleased about this. So, and also, India gave the Americans the intelligence, if you like, that one of the warships returning, small warships, returning from an innocent military meeting, gathering, if you like, a conference in India, gave the intel to the Americans, who then sunk it off Sri Lanka. The way India has behaved, its fence sitting, has actually got it into a huge lot of trouble. And things are going to change, I think, as far as the idea of BRICS as well. So we're in for a really tumultuous time, I think, now, characterized by collapse of the fiat currency system, because it is led by the dollar. And, just a small point. If you look at the US Treasury debt, that's now over 39 trillion. It crossed that Rubicon, I think, last week?
And of course, as you rightly said earlier in this interview, we all know the way the Western cat will jump when it comes to fiat currency and interest rates and so on and so forth, which is why I think the structural value of gold will be coming to the surface quite quickly in the next few weeks, I would think, because sooner or later, everybody's going to have to actually put up or shut up. And that's the Fed, that's Washington, that's Modi in Delhi, who I don't think is a very popular guy. Anyway, with a lot of people, I think his days could be numbered. Trump's clearly days are numbered. I mean, he's almost incoherent. And their defense secretary, Hesketh, I mean, fascinating. Who trusts a chap with his hair smarmed back in brill cream? I mean, frankly, but leaving that aside, that's just my history.
As one person with very little hair to another.
He would say that, wouldn't he? Well, at least I got something to smear back. Very fair comment. Well, look, things are unfolding so quickly, and And you can get, if you just look at the tab there, you know how to follow Alasdair's great stuff and see the work he's doing. And I'm sure that I can persuade Alasdair, if I can shove a good lunch inside him, to come on my show again in the fullness of time. But I think there's going to be more to talk about, and I think more to talk about rather soon than we might imagine.
Yeah. I would agree with that very, very much. I actually, on the reaction of gold to these developments, I actually put out a note this morning. So if anybody wants to have a look, you're welcome to. Come to my Substack. I mean, it's the other thing is the bond yields are now rising. They're going to break up into new high ground, and that's going to kill the equity market. The Fed and the US Treasury is going to have to do the most massive rescue job for the whole system, the whole US system. And when they do that, one way or the other, basically they trash their own currency. That's going to be the immediate consequence of this. And this is why I think that this collapse in the dollar is something that's only going to take 1 or 2 years from now. It's going to be very rapid, and it's been brought forward by this ridiculous war against Iran. Just absolutely crazy. And look who we're led by. Look around Europe, Brussels. Look at our own government, who will probably go even more left-wing as a result. It would just destroy everything. Everything is being destroyed by the politics. So what do? Get the hell out of credit. Credit's going down to zero. Get out of it and get into real money, which is only gold, arguably also silver, and also commodities. I mean, the commodities, if you look at the value of commodities priced in gold, they are ridiculously cheap, which gives a huge, great inflation. I mean, inflation, it's loss of purchasing power of currencies, inflation push later on this year. I wouldn't be surprised to see inflation at the end of this year somewhere north of 20%. I'm not forecasting it, but given that things are collapsing very rapidly, try not to argue against a far higher rate of inflation. Don't believe the Office of Budget Responsibility. Don't believe the Fed when they say at the end of this year we think that the oil price is likely to raise the level of consumer prices by 1%. I mean, come on. That's absolutely ridiculous. We're also going to get food shortages because fertilizer is a major, major byproduct of the refining, the refineries in the Gulf. Something like a quarter of the world's fertilizers come out of the Gulf, effectively. And guess what? It's the start of the growing season for the Northern Hemisphere. What's the farming industry going to do? The farming industry is not going to produce the quantities of food that we really require. What does the government do? Print money so we can buy food, which basically means that it drives food prices up even more. Godfrey, you and I have seen this time and time again, and we're already seeing this starting now with our wonderful government saying, higher fuel prices, don't worry, we will pay the difference. We will ensure that nobody goes without fuel, whatever. You got all this rubbish coming on. They're going to print their way out of our trouble, and currencies are going down. That's the key point to take away.
Well, everybody, hold that in. And everybody laughs. I know my subscribers like a little laugh. I always say, if you got your gold and you stick it in the tea caddy, the bastards can't find it. All right, it's off the table. And I'm not, although I was in Montevideo last year, I'm not sponsored by Fray Bentos. But if you get a Fray Bentos couple of pies, tin pies there, when the balloon goes up, they'll do you jolly well. And I know they're only gravy pies. They're not meat pies anymore. They're gravy pies, but the gravy is bloody delicious. And I am trying to get them to sponsor my channel, Fray Bentos. And I've got a small holding as well, so we're all right for veg. But it's coming. It's coming. And only you can protect your family. Nobody can protect your family. Keir Starmer can't protect your family. Nobody else can do it. You've got to do it yourself. And you're going to have to, first thing you've got to do is go wakey. Got to wake up to all this. But anyway, thanks again, yet again, Alasdair, for your words of wisdom. They are very much appreciated, and especially by my subscribers. And Alasdair's subset, which you can also subscribe to, bit more expensive than mine, but he's worth every penny. He's worth every
Thank
penny.
you.
And again, thanks again. Toodaloo.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based, and I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.